Hi everybody, it's Chris and welcome back to another video. I thought today I'd attempt a rankings video. I've never done one of these before because I find them so difficult to do. But this is a band I've been listening to now for well over 40 years, so I think I'm in a good position to share my thoughts around my least favourite and my most favourite album by them, but also the songs that I really like on each of their albums. So the band in question is Blue Oyster Cult. This was a band I saw in 1978 at the Winter Gardens in Bournemouth. They were supported by Japan, who was a strange partner for a tour, and they weren't very good at all. But Blue Oyster Cult were absolutely magnificent with their 5 guitars and their laser shows. They were amazing. And consequently, in fact, the following day almost, I think, I bought the 12-inch single, But Don't Fear the Reaper. You know, the song that's been on every Father's Day CD and rock compilation since, you know, the dawn of time. Great single, great song, absolute classic. A couple of weeks after that concert, I went out and I bought their double live album, On Your Feet or On Your Knees. Now, for me, this is one of the greatest live albums. I love this album. It's absolutely superb. The only gripe I have about it is there's a couple of cover songs on it that if they weren't on it and were replaced by a few songs from the first 3 albums, this would be even better. But as it stands, it's brilliant, and I think some of the definitive versions of some of their classic songs are on this double live album. It's kind of mysterious and ever so slightly weird. The cover's great. Really, really great album, and as I said, some of the definitive versions of some of their absolute classic songs. I'm not going to rank the live albums alongside the studio albums, actually. I'm just going to predominantly focus on the studio albums. I do have a couple of other live albums from '78, Some Enchanted Evening, which is a good album. It's only a single album though, and it contains 2 covers, MC5's Kick Out the Jams and the Animals' We've Got to Get Out This Place, which, given their back catalogue and the richness of their back catalogue, that was a bit of a shame really, a bit of a missed opportunity, but it does contain some really good versions of some of their well-known songs, including, I think, the best version of Astronomy. More about that song later. The other live album is from '82, and it's called Extraterrestrial Live. Again, this one is back to being a double, very kind of Blue Oyster Cult-ish cover. It has, obviously in live format, some of their 79, 80 and 81 output, which is good to have, and also some of their older stuff as well, which isn't as good as it is on the other 2 albums, but it's a decent album to have. But it's my 3rd favourite of those 3 official live albums. So I've got 11 studio albums. I'm not going to include 3. The 3 I'm not going to include because they're from the CD kind of era, and I don't own them actually, is Heaven Forbid from '99, Curse of the Hidden Mirror from 2001, and The Symbol Remains from 2020. And they're all reasonably decent albums, especially the last one, The Symbol Remains. I think Heaven Forbid is kind of a bit too metal, doesn't sound like Blue Oyster Cult, and Curse of the Hidden Mirror is a little bit inconsistent, but I'm not going to include those in the rankings. I'm just going to show albums from the kind of vinyl era, if you like. So in 11th place, I've put this one, and it's not because it's the worst one. Imaginos is an album from 1988. It's not really a Blue Oyster Cult album. This was earmarked as a side project for Albert Bouchard, who was the drummer from the original Blue Oyster Cult, alongside Sandy Pearlman, who was the producer of Blue Oyster Cult in the early days. And this is based on the poems of Sandy Pearlman and is loosely a concept album, and is a half decent album actually. It's quite long, it's about 30 minutes I think, which on vinyl makes it quite quiet, but there's some decent songs on here. Now, Blue Oyster Cult is a band that quite often will have some odd song titles, and there's one on here which certainly is that. The Siege and Investiture of Baron von Frankenstein's Castle of Viseria. There's a catchy little title. It's a half decent song, but the trouble with it is it has a guest vocalist, so it doesn't sound like Blue Oyster Cult. Now, the record company obviously put them under a bit of pressure to have the original lineup, and the original lineup is listed on here, but I'm not sure that the 5 of them ever play together in any of the songs on here. So it doesn't feel like a Blue Oyster Cult album, despite the fact it is titled thus. A couple of songs I really do like though. The opener, I'm the One You Warned Me Of, is good, and In the Presence of Another World is my favourite song. There are 2 songs here that are rehashes of previous stuff. So there's a version of Astronomy which is nowhere near as good as the live version on Some Enchanted Evening or the studio version on Secret Treaties. And there's also a song called Blue Oyster Cult, which is just a kind of a remake of one of their classics, of Subhuman, but is really not very good at all. And so we're on to the proper Blue Oyster Cult albums, if you like. So in 10th place is this one, The Revolution by Night. Very Blue Oyster Cult cover, but unfortunately not a very Blue Oyster Cult production. Production is handled by a Canadian fellow called Bruce Fairbairn, who went on to produce Aerosmith, did Slippery When Wet by Bon Jovi. I think he did an AC/DC album. He was also, before this, did Loverboy, and it just doesn't sound right. The production is dreadful on here. So it's summarised for me on a track called Shooting Sharp, which is all right, but it's got a sax solo to finish. It's got kind of twangy, slappy bass in it, which just doesn't fit the band at all. And the worst thing, and it permeates the entire album actually, is electronic drums. I mean, that should be just banned. And it just really dates this album. And there's some good songs on here that if they were produced well and handled well, they would have been great songs. Take Me Away, for example. Eyes on Fire is quite an anthemic AOR polished kind of song. But Shadow of California and especially Dragon Lady are two decent rock songs actually, which again, if they'd been produced well, would have been half decent. But the electronic drums really let that album down. Next up is an album that's often seen as their worst album. I wouldn't rate it as bad as Revolution by Night. It's 85's Club Ninja. It's probably got the worst cover, but I don't think it's the worst album. I didn't like this when it first came out, actually. I dismissed it, if I'm honest. But it's grown on me over the years, and there's one or two songs on here I do quite like. So Shadow Warrior is pretty good. White Flags, which is a cover. I can't remember who originally did it, but it's quite decent. Madness to the Method is good, and Dancing in the Ruins is good as well. But In Perfect Water, I think they've got one of the best songs they did in the 80s, actually. So that's Club Ninja from 1985. Worthy of reappraising, possibly. Next up is an album from 79. Now, I don't know how much commercial success they had. They did certainly with one of their albums, but a couple of albums after that I don't think were as commercially successful, so I think the record company put them under a bit of pressure to produce something that was a bit more commercial, and in 79 they came up with Mirrors. Whilst they often do good covers, this is clearly not an example. Like Club Ninja, not a good album cover at all. It's a reasonable bunch of songs actually. It's quite a consistent album, if I'm honest, but you've got to like kind of quite polished late 70s, early 80s AOR to really like it. So the opening track, Doctor Music, it's got female vocalists, backing vocalists, and it just doesn't suit the band. The Great Sun Jester is a half-decent song, but it sounds like kind of 78, 79 era Jefferson Starship for me. Moon Crazy, I think, is the band attempting to be a little bit kind of maybe Steely Dan-esque. The Vigil is a decent song. If it wasn't so polished, I think would be good. I Am the Storm is okay. And there's a song on here called You're Not the One I Was Looking For, which just sounds like the Cars. And this is produced by a guy called Tom Werman, who produced Ted Nugent, Molly Hatchet, and also Cheap Trick. And that kind of pop metal approach is very much to the fore on this album, and it just doesn't work, I don't think, for the band. Next up is an album that is often seen as one of their best. In fact, it's commercially, I think, their most successful. And the reason for that, I think, is because it does contain their classic Don't Fear the Reaper. It also has another classic by them called ETI. The trouble is, I think for me that's where it finishes. The album is Agents of Fortune. It's okay, but I think the rest of the songs are very overshadowed by ETI and Don't Fear the Reaper. It's the only studio album of theirs that's a gatefold. It's just for me it's not a great album at all. I don't mind Morning Final or Tattoo Vampire alongside ETI and Don't Fear the Reaper, but actually that's it. So, I would hesitate to put Mirrors higher than this, but I probably would go to Mirrors more often than I go to this, probably because I'm so familiar with the Reaper and with ETI. Next up is an album that followed on from Mirrors, and it's a kind of back to the proper BOC style and sound. It was produced by Martin Birch, who'd worked with Deep Purple, Whitesnake, Iron Maiden, And in 1980, he worked with Black Sabbath on the album Heaven and Hell. And this was recorded in 1980. In fact, Blue Oyster Cult went on tour with Black Sabbath on the Black and Blue tour. Now, a very much more Blue Oyster Cult looking cover, and certainly the subject matter and the sound is very much more Blue Oyster Cult. So we've got Black Blade, great song. Monsters is okay. Divine Wind is a bit bluesy. Deadline's okay. Marshall Plan is okay. Fallen Angel is all right. Lips in the Hills is a really good song. So, you know, this is a good album that actually returns the sound. It's got a couple of little inserts. I'm no idea what that's about at all, but that's one of them. And this, I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever opened this. I'm guessing, yeah, this is a poster of the cover. There we are, a poster of the cover. So that's Cultosaurus erectus from 1980, a kind of back to form album for them. Now, in 1977, they brought out an album which they toured in the UK in 78. That's when I saw them. And that album was Spectres. This is a decent hard rock album. I really enjoy this album. It has one or two of their kind of classics, if you like, especially in the opening song, Godzilla, which is a really good song. Golden Age of Leather is good. Death Valley Nights is good. Are You Ready to Rock is on here, which is a great opener at a concert. It works well on the live album Some Enchanted Evening. And I think they opened with that when I saw them in Bournemouth. But it's not really a studio album kind of track, really. But I Love the Night is a kind of a ballad written by Buck Dahmer, the lead guitarist, who also sings. And that's a kind of an attempt to, I think, have a song that was a bit like The Last Days of May, which is one of their classics. And it also closes the album with a track called Nosferatu, which is a really good atmospheric kind of song. And, you know, for me on here, we've got very typical Blue Oyster Cult, you know, good riffs, some real melodies, some good guitar playing, some harmonies, all of that kind of thing. And I think one of the unique things about this band is that they all sang. I think it's only Agents of Fortune where all five members sing on any one album, but certainly it gives the band quite a lot of variety and depth, I think. Now, in 1981, I went to the States to visit some friends there and some relatives, and really big on the radio was this track, Burning For You. I love this song with its great line, time to play B-sides. I love that line. And it comes from the album Fire of Unknown Origin. Classic cover, really good typical Blue Oyster Cult cover, and lots of very typical Blue Oyster Cult kind of material. So Fire of Unknown Origin starts the album, really good opening track. Burning For You is great. Veteran of the Psychic Wars is good. It was a track that featured on the film Heavy Metal, actually. The live version from Extraterrestrial Live is much better and is worth seeking out, but it's a good version on here. After Dark has a kind of a bass and a keyboard, especially a keyboard, kind of new wavy kind of sound. And then towards the end, there's this really good guitar part to it. But it is an attempt, I think, to make the band maybe a little bit more 1981 than they were. There's a track on here that's very popular with Blue Oyster Cult fans, but I don't really like it very much, actually. It's called Joan Crawford. And they play it live quite a lot, and I just couldn't get into it, really. But a really good album. One of their most successful, I think, in terms of sales, probably on the back of that track Burning For You. And then we're on to the top three, and these top three albums, and if you know anything about Blue Oyster Cult, you probably would have worked out that they are their first three albums, so it's which order are they going to come in. Now I think their third best album is their second album. So their second album came out in 1973. It was a heavier sound than their debut, but a really good album. The issue with it is called Tyranny and Mutation. What a great cover. You can see why they're called the black and white period. Two sides, the black side and the red side. And for me, the black side, the first side, is so much better than the red side, the second side. So the first side has got the red and black, OD'd on Life Itself, which is okay. Hot Rails to Hell, one of their classics, 7 Screaming Disbusters, which is a great track. And then side 2 is not as strong, and that's why it's in third place behind these other two. The track that closes the album is called Mistress of the Salmon Salt, Quicklime Girl, which is a good track. But that's Tyranny and Mutation from 73. In second place is their debut album from 1971. At least it was recorded in 71. I think it might be released 71 into 72 possibly. But their debut is Blue Oyster Cult. I love the cover, kind of that mysterious kind of look to it. It's a kind of a mix of kind of a little bit of a kind of Steppenwolfy kind of sound, a bit psychedelic in places. It's also got a little bit of southern sound to it as well, despite the fact they're a New York band. But Transmania Con MC, fantastic song. Then came The Last of May, wonderful story about a failed drugs exchange. Really, really good track, although I think it's better live. And if you seek out some of the bootlegs, which you can find on YouTube, it really stretches out. They play a really long guitar solo in it, which is absolutely brilliant. But it's a great song on here. Stairway to the Stars is one of their classics, and I think they used to open with that song. And if that had been on Your Feet or On Your Knees, how much better would that have album been with that track? Before the Kiss, A Red Cap is great. Side 1 is really good. Side 2 is not as strong, but still good, because it does feature one of their classics, Cities on Flame, with rock and roll, kind of proto-metal song. The wonderfully titled She's as Beautiful as a Foot, which is a great song, and Worship of the Telescopes, which I do really like. So that's their debut from 71, 72, 71, Blue Oyster Cult. And that brings me to my favourite album by them. And I think this sometimes features on pretty much everyone's list as their top album, and it's Secret Treaties. This album is the third of the Black and White series. Came out in 74. It's their most consistent album, I think, and it contains some of their absolute classics. So Career of Evil starts. It's a great song. Subhuman is definitely one of their best songs. Dominance and Submission, great song. That should have been on the On Your Feet or On Your Knees. ME 262, which is one of those German jet fighters. Side 2 has got a song called KG Cretins, or Cretins if you say it in American. Harvester of Eyes, one of their classics. Flaming Telepaths, great song. That should have been on Your Feet or On Your Knees. And the song that definitely should have been on that album, which I think is their best song. And I think it's one of my favourite songs of all time, actually. It closes down. It's kind of like their Stairway to Heaven kind of moment, I suppose. It's the track Astronomy. Absolutely wonderful. This is a brilliant album, very consistent, high quality, stellar kind of stuff. So there's my ranking of the Blue Oyster Cult studio output. Let me know your thoughts. Put the comments below. You know, is there anything you would change in there? What's your favourite songs? What's your favourite album? If you enjoyed that and you don't subscribe, click on subscribe. The more the merrier. You know, give me a thumbs up if you like the content. And hopefully I'll be back sometime soon with another video. Thanks very much. Cheers.